This permaculture bed began in 2015 and then it sunk, so it needed redoing. I had a lot of branches from a lot of cut down trees and limbs that I needed to do something with. So part one, I decided to make a waffle fence. Well, that didn't work out because I needed to protect my newly built bed from critters, so the waffle fence wasn't going to work for me. Since I don't have a wood chopper or a shredder, I decided to take my wattle fence idea and go around the top of my permaculture bed and make it look like almost a bird's nest. Now I had an idea. I have some hardwood limbs that I trimmed up, and they are hard. I mean, it's like concrete. And I decided instead of a trellis, I was going to use these tall pieces of branch that were hard, and I would wire them in to one end of my permaculture bed, which looked very odd after I finished, but I had a vision that the squash plants could crawl up and I could anchor them to these limbs, and it could be a living branch again, almost, with the squash hanging from these limbs, which the limbs were strong enough to hold it, to support it. So we shall see. If the slugs don't eat the squash before they become squash and the temperatures cooperate, we might have a work of beauty. Then again, we might not. Time will tell. Isn't that always in the garden when you have a weird vision? A closer look at the tomato, the new wooden bed that I made out in the yard. Oddly enough, the place that gets the less sun, and there's canopies of trees overhead that sort of protect from hard rain, this particular bed. Now this particular bed only gets very few hours of really warm sunlight, and yet I planted tomatoes and peppers, jalapeno peppers in here. Why, you ask? Because I ran out of places to put things, and I needed to make a cage for this to keep the squirrels and chipmunks out when the tomatoes become on the vine, because they're going to eat them up if I don't protect it. So there, and the groundhog. Remember the groundhog, don't forget about that. So there's wire at the bottom of this box. There's layers, there's two actually layers of wire, and there's cardboard, and there's soil in this box, and I planted them in there. And like I said, it gets very little really direct sunlight. Doesn't get the 6 hours that it might need. But this tomato is doing the best out of everything that I have growing on my deck garden. So yeah, soil is better than containers. You get all of the goodness from the soil. It comes up. The roots are probably by now, because this was planted back in, I think, May. So yeah, it's doing very nicely. Now I am not removing the suckers on this particular tomato plant. There's only one tomato plant and the rest are peppers. I'm not going to take the suckers off like I usually do on the other ones. I'm going to leave it grow wild. Yeah. Leave it grow wild. It's out in the wild. It's out in the yard where the wildness lives with the squirrels and the chipmunks. So we shall see how this fares as in comparison. Well, I already know it's faring 100% better than what I've got. My tomatoes on my deck are just not faring very well at all. And they've been covered and they've been protected from heavy rains, and because there's no tree canopy to protect them, so like there is down in the yard, so it doesn't get belted with a lot of rain. When I planted it in May, I did, however, cover it with a bed sheet until they were, established to be outside in the yard. So we shall see this experiment. But so far, so good. It's working the best. really is. I'm very pleased. As the title suggests, beauty after the rain. These are my daylilies. Aren't they just beautiful? They have been here for over 22 years. Next year will be 23 years. Well, yeah. Duh. But I'm amazed at this plant. Now, because I've had cooler weather, cooler temperatures, it has really helped this plant. Although this plant always remains in the shade where I have it. There's a canopy of trees. There's a pine tree, and there's cedar trees, and there's all kinds of trees that it's underneath the canopy, yet it gets really dry in this particular area. But this year, the blooms are amazing. Just day before yesterday, I took a picture, and there were a few buds not quite ready to open. And now I looked out today. After the rain, it rained very gently all day yesterday, and they just exploded with color. Isn't that amazing? Oh, Mother Nature, she knows what she's doing. I wish we could too. Thank you so much for spending time with me and checking out my daylilies and listening to me carry on about my permaculture bed and my visions. And I had a nightmare the other night. I had a giant bird. It looked like a blue jay, but it was in the shape of a ostrich. And it had a bucket of toys. And it had hands. What does that mean? What does that mean? Stay tuned for the bloopers. Thank you so much. This was originally permaculture bed, or horticulture bed, or that word I can't pronounce, bed. No, I'm not going to use that as a yay.